Hey class, congratulations on finishing the keyboarding section of the class. Hopefully everybody is typing while having a perfect posture and you're looking at your copy instead of the keyboard and your fingers. And if not, we still have quite a bit of time to practice, so don't get too worried yet. Okay, I wanted to make this recording because the format of the class is going to change a little bit moving forward. And so what I want to talk about in this recording is the, um, the two different books that we're going to be using and also how to get started using the word processing documents. Okay, lessons 21 through 24, the way that GDP launches Microsoft Word and the documents is a little bit different than what's going to happen the remainder of the semester. And so I'm going to have this video and then I'm going to have a second video that's going to talk about how you use GDP in conjunction with Word in the later chapters. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at now is we have our large book, which I refer to as the textbook, and that's the book that we've been using. Okay, some things that I want to point out in this book now is if you look on page 75 or lesson 21, you're going to see that there's a section for language arts. Okay, and we're going to have language arts in lessons moving forward, and I want to make sure that you pay attention to them because a lot of this stuff will be on tests. Okay, and so you want to make sure you read through all of the language arts sections, and then whenever you see over on the left hand side, if you see a rule, you want to make sure you pay attention to that because that will definitely be on tests as we move forward. Okay, the other difference that you're going to see in the book, if you, in your text, if you go to page, say 84 and 85, also on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see gray boxes with exclamation points in them. And so those are tips that's giving you information about whatever subject they're talking about. And they're always very good tips, and you might want to make sure that you pay attention to them and you do read them. Because again, a lot of this is going to, number one, be on tests, and number two, it's going to make your working and creating documents a lot easier if you do read the information in these boxes. Okay, so going back to lesson 21, if I turn the page from 75 to 76, what you're going to see at the bottom of page 76 now is when I look at lesson 21E, it says word processing getting started and orientation to word processing. And then on the left hand side, you see this green arrow that says go to Word Manual. Okay, and so your Word Manual is the small book that came in the box when you bought your textbook. Okay, and so what we'll be doing from now on is we'll be working back and forth between the textbook and the smaller Word Manual. So whenever you see that the green arrow that says go to Word Manual, then you go to your small manual and go to whatever lesson that it is you're working on. Okay, so in this case we're in lesson 21. So if I go to page 4 of my Word Manual, then what I see is at the top it says GDP Start Word. Okay, and so here's some directions on how to get going in Word. And then in the gray box, it's practice. Okay, so the whole concept with this Word Manual is that it will tell you about a certain feature in Word. Okay, so let's, for example, let's go to the next page, say page 6. So it's going to talk about how do you choose a command. Okay, and then it's talking about the ribbon. And so what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to read about the feature in Word. Okay, and so you would read all of page 6 and all of page 7, and then when you get to page 8, you see there's a gray box that says practice. Okay, and so then you would want to go ahead and actually do what you had just learned about. Okay, so it's 2 books, and in the word manual, you're reading and you're practicing. Okay, so now if we look at the screen for lesson 21E, what it's going to do is it already has a document for lesson 21E, and this is what you would use during your practice. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to right here where it says download file, and I'm going to click on it. Okay, and I use a Mac, and so the way my download works might be different than the way your download works if you're working on a Windows machine. Okay, and the other difference is if you're on a Windows machine, up at the top along here, you might have a yellow bar that essentially says that that it's a read-only document, and then over to the right-hand side of it, it will say enable editing, and so you need to go ahead and click on that, and then that opens up the document so that you can work on it. Okay, so this is the document that GDP already created, and so that's what went ahead and opened when I said download document. If you came into Word directly and you opened a new document, you would have a blank sheet of paper here. Okay, there wouldn't be any text on it. And up on the top, it would be named Document 1. Okay, and it will go ahead if you then open a second Word document. Again, it would be blank on the page, but then in your title bar, it would say Document 2. Okay, and so when you go to save your document, what you want to do is you want to rename it, most likely, because if you just call your documents Document 1 and Document 2, it's not very descriptive and you don't know what it's going to be. And so what you do is you want to do a save as, and then you can name it something else. Okay, but for right now, if we go back to page, say, 6 and 7. Page 6 is showing us up at the top the different parts of Microsoft Word. Okay, and so the ribbon that it talks about is this whole area up here. Okay, and it has the different tabs, and it has different groupings. Okay, so under the Home tab, it has the font grouping, it has the paragraph grouping, styles grouping, and so on. Okay, so what Word tries to do is it takes similar functionality and it groups it into one area. If I clicked on the next tab, Layout, you can see everything here in my ribbon changes. All of the buttons underneath Layout are different than what I saw when I was in Home. So now I have a page setup grouping, I have margins, I have text layout. Okay, I'm going to click back on Home. Some of the other things that it talks about here on page 6 is the ruler that you see up here above your document. So the white part means that that's the part that you can type in. Okay, the blue on the left side and the right side, that means that that's margin area. So I have a 1-inch margin. Okay, and by default, Word does have a 1-inch margin, left and right, and top and bottom. Okay, what else? So over here on the right-hand side, you have a vertical scroll bar. And so you can use this to move up and down throughout your document. And if I had more than one document, I'd also have a horizontal scroll bar down at the bottom. Okay, and then down here at the very bottom, this is your status bar. So it'll tell you how many words are in your document. It'll tell you if you have spelling and grammar, how many pages you have, and so on and so forth. And again, My screen might look a little bit different than yours because I am using a Mac versus a Windows machine. Okay. The other thing that you can see down here at the bottom where it says 100%, this is my zoom in, zoom out. And so if I clicked on my zoom and I moved it to the right, okay, it's going to make my text bigger. If I move it to the left, it's going to make it smaller. Okay. So that's just if you ever want to really look at something and you want to have it larger, that's how you would zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so make sure that you study everything on the top of page 6, okay, because you're going to be using that a lot, and the terms that they use here will be on tests. Okay, if I look at page 7, one of the first things that it's talking about is this a screen tip. Okay, so when you look at on your ribbon and you look at all of the different buttons, it's like there's a lot of things that Word does, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember all of this? But don't worry about that, because if you forget what a certain button does, all you have to do is hover your mouse cursor on that button, and then the screen tip will come up and it will tell you what that button does. So for example, I'm at underline. If I move over here to the I, it's going to tell me this would make my text italic. If I come to the B, it means it will make my text bold. Okay, so just remember, if you forget something, you can always just hover your mouse over it. Okay, the other thing I want to mention is that in Microsoft Word, you can usually do different, I'm sorry, you can usually use your mouse or your keyboard to complete a function. Okay, so sometimes you would want to use the copy, and you might want to use your a button on your keyboard to do or a button on your ribbon to do the copy, or I can use Control C and that would copy something. Okay, so there's usually a keyboard way to complete a function as well as a mouse way to complete a function. And that will just become personal preference to you. Some things I use the mouse, and sometimes I use the keyboard. And it's just, you know, that's the way I learned, or that's just easier for me for whatever reason. Okay? So when you're done with your practice, so what you're going to do in lesson 21, you go through and you do all of these practices. Okay? And when you're done, you're going to want to go back into GDP. And so you want to go ahead and you want to save your document, your practice document. So you would say File and then Save As. And you're going to want to tell it where you want to save it. Okay, so you might save it on your hard drive. So you might want to just put it in Documents. Or if you have a USB drive and you want to save it there, you can try saving it there as well. Or you can save it to your desktop, wherever you're planning on keeping all of your files for GDP. Okay? So if I was going to save it, I would just click on Documents. I'm going to leave the name the same, and then I click on Save. Okay, so I just saved it, and now I want to close out of Word, and so I'm going to click on this red X. For me, it's on the left-hand side because it's a Mac, but when you have a Windows machine, it's going to be over here on the right-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to close this guy. Oop, I have another one open. And now here I am, I'm back right in GDP. And so I would just then come back down here to the bottom right-hand side and click on the next button. And it goes ahead and brings me to lesson 22. Okay, so this is pretty much how it's going to work for lessons 21 through 24. And then in the next video, I will give you some information on how to use GDP going forward from there. Okay, thanks, and I will talk to you soon.